present. We'll go around and do introductions, starting with the mayor.
Matt Zacher, Mayor.
Dean Veneman, District 2.
Justin Pluis, District 3 Committee Member.
Jeff Benscover, Alderman, District 4.
Jay Catanaw, District 5.
Dennis Pollock, District 6.
Michael Tim, District 7.
Madeline Palmquist, District 8.
Sue Schill, City Attorney.
Thank you, everyone. Item 2, discuss a referral from the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department for revisions to ordinances regarding drug paraphernalia and tobacco products, and to create ordinances regarding marijuana, synthetic cannabinoids, and hemp-derived cannabinoids. We have a speaker tonight.
Push that green button. That light.
Right here? There we
You're
are.
on now.
So if you didn't hear me, my name is Cody Wetro. I'm a detective with Rapids PD. Yesterday, I was asked to come in to ask questions. If you guys got questions about this ordinance, I didn't know I'd be speaking, so I didn't prepare anything, but I'll give you a summary, I guess, what led up to this ordinance recommendation or changes. I work with the Central Wisconsin Drug Task Force. So a lot of my casework involves drugs and drug trends and issues in our community. And ultimately, what this came from was the 2018 Farm Bill. Our laws kind of fell behind locally as to what the federal laws and state laws were kind of regulating. And within the last, well, from 2018 until now, it kind of started out in some of our CBD shops and gas stations with CBD products and Delta 8 products. That continued to kind of snowball, and we had THC-H and THC-V and THC-O and THC-A+. I mean, they had all these different kinds and letters and numbers behind it. The science was changing, and they're deriving, ultimately the companies are deriving cannabinoids from hemp products. So the plants themselves, the hemp plants, are legal, and they're processed legally, and they're produced legally, and the products that are being produced are all legal products and being sold. But these other cannabinoids that are in there have very similar effects to Delta-9 THC, and Delta-9 is the primary ingredient in cannabis-derived plants. So ultimately what led up to this recommendation is we're seeing issues in our school district where I was a school resource officer for 3 years, and our current school resource officers got into those positions right at the beginning of this trend. Like when I was a SRO from 2015 to 2018, you'd get a little bit of drugs here and there, but it was mostly pills or Delta-9 THC, the illegal stuff. But now our SROs are being overrun with vapes, drinks, gummies, different types of edibles, candy bars, gummy bears. They're getting overrun in the schools with all these THC products, but by legal definition under our state statutes, they're legal products. So the school district has their policies in place where they can enforce their school rules, and they can put kids up for expulsion for having impairing substances in the schools, but they usually want the weight of law enforcement to be at their hearings to say something was addressed. They were either cited for underage alcohol or possession of THC, or they want to have some type of law enforcement consequence attached to that. And right now, we don't have that tool in our toolbox. When the SROs are going to those expulsion hearings, we don't have anything in our books that we can address. The sheriff's office has partnered up with us, and they've offered to send deputies to the school in the interim right now. So if we have a kid that comes in with a Delta-8 vape and they're under 21, it's on school grounds, they can't have it, a deputy can write them an ordinance citation from the county, but then we're not getting that back from the city though either. We really should be handling it in-house. So that's what kind of all this stemmed from, was confusion about the current laws, because even within the last year, we had some of our younger officers that hadn't been trained on the 2018 Farm Bill, and they were coming across vapes and other edibles and products that people had bought on 8th Street in town, and they were taking people into custody for it. I'm like, hold the phone. We can't be arresting people for legal products that are federally legal and allowed to be sold. So we had to do some internal training, and I've had multiple conversations with the district attorney's office since that time, because county-wide it was kind of confusing for law enforcement officers, because for the last 30 years, if they have the green stuff, they go to jail. Well, that's all changed. There's hemp-derived, there's cannabis-derived, and one's legal, one's illegal. The second part of this ordinance that I reviewed, it looks like they're looking to address the cannabis-derived Delta-9, less than 5 grams for a city citation versus a criminal charge. We're recommending that from the PD because we are overrun with those types of charges, and in the grand scheme of things at the DA's office, possession of marijuana is pretty low on their totem pole. So when we forward up a criminal charge of possession of THC for less than 5 grams, we're one of the only agencies in the county that's doing that. All the other municipalities are issuing citations, and bring that revenue back to their local municipality and handling it through municipal court. Ultimately, that's the summary I guess I can provide. And if you have any questions specifically about the different cannabinoids or how we got to this point, I'd be happy to answer.
So the hemp-derived cannabinoids that are defined in this ordinance, those are the ones that people can buy legally at gas stations or
Yes,
stores or,
and
okay,
any of the vape shops or gas stations, Richard's Liquors, I think even the grocery store has it now. They have a whole section of THC drinks and options available.
okay. So then this ordinance would allow our police department to enforce anyone under the age of 21 having possession of those products, no matter the amount.
Correct. Any of the hemp-derived products in this ordinance would be addressed at the age of 21 and under. So
And then if-
just like underage alcohol citation, it'd be an underage possession citation.
Perfect. Then if somebody over the age of 21 buys a, I don't know, 12-pack of this THC-derived product from, I don't know, IGA,
Yeah.
they're still safe. As long as they're,
Yeah,
I mean,
if
operating
they're-
under the influence is
yeah,
never
if-
okay, but they wouldn't be cited if they got pulled over for speeding and then had a pack in their
Yep,
car.
yeah, they can have a 12-pack of it in there. If they're over 21, they can legally possess, legally consume. Still can't operate a motor vehicle, obviously, under the influence, but
Right.
they're allowed to possess them and consume them and have them on their property. Just can't give them to juveniles or anyone under 21.
Excellent, thank you.
Are retailers aware that they are not to sell to anyone under 21 these products?
Once this ordinance passed, we'll have to educate them and give them forewarning that the ordinance has passed. I'm sure if they watch the minutes at all, they might be watching it close already. I know one of the shops in town, when they opened 2 years ago, they called my line direct. They just asked the drug investigator, and they got ahead of it and said, hey, we're capping everybody at 21. We just want you to know that, because they didn't want to cause issues in the school district. They didn't want to cause issues with local law enforcement, and they had a nationwide chain. So they reached, at least one of the shops reached out in advance, and they already have that parameter set. But I know of a couple others in town that have been selling to anybody that comes in the door. So if this gets passed, we'll have to advise them of the new ordinances and rules to make sure they stay within the regulations.
Okay.
I also see the restriction of not being able to sell any of these products within 750 feet of a school, a church, or a couple of other criteria there. I lost it in the ordinance. We don't currently have any businesses that are within that 750 feet. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, but if we do, they would be grandfathered. And it says doesn't apply to businesses current selling as of a certain date. This says July 1, and it probably would be the date of passage of the ordinance. So I can't say that there are or there aren't, but we can't really, we're not shutting down anyone that's currently in business. But this ordinance would provide that in the future, that would not be possible to sell within 700 feet of those businesses or organizations.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't forcing anybody to move or putting anybody out of business.
If I could just add, and I'm sure Detective Wetterell will agree with me, and just because all of these certain products are sold at all these locations that are hemp-derived to adults, you know, you don't know necessarily what's in all of them, right? So I don't want to have the blanket thing that as long as an adult is buying all of these things and then gets stopped and then gets tested, because I've had a couple cases where they say, well, I bought this, and it's possible that there is some sale of something that maybe does exceed the allowable percent for THC. I mean, possible, I guess.
Possible, yes and no. So the way the state does their testing is they're actually testing the dry weight before they make some of these products.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was what some of our officers were confused about over the last couple of years as things developed. The first few years it was all Delta 8, Delta 10, THC-H, THC-O, like those were the staples.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then also in the last 2 years, we started seeing Delta 9 hemp-derived drinks. Well, that was confusing a lot of our younger guys because they're like, well, Delta 9's the bad one. We can't have that. That's cannabis. But if it is hemp-derived Delta 9, they like, for example, you could buy a tin of gummies at the gas station in West Grand, and those are 1,200 milligram gummies. and there's probably gonna be 30 milligrams of Delta-9 in one of those gummies.
Mhm.
Like, they're strong gummies, but
Right.
the way they're processed and developed, they are 2018 Farm Bill compliant. So
Mhm.
even with our mobile test kits that we use 2 different brands. Some of those will pop hot for THC Delta-9, but it says right on the label that's what it is, but it's a hemp-derived product.
Yeah.
And that's where the confusion was coming in from law enforcement, our prosecuting offices. Around the state, there was confusion on it, and training has been improving over the last year to kind of catch up to the current situation that we're in. But yeah, if they do keep their receipts, what we've been telling our guys now to do is, if they stop somebody and they have a plastic baggie or a knotted baggie tied off in green leafy material in it, and they have no receipts or explanation where it came from, they will test it. If it tests positive, they'll move forward with criminal citation, either an ordinance citation or a criminal arrest. But if they have receipts and packaging material to verify where they got it from, then they let it go. Obviously, people could skirt around that system and put the illegal stuff in the right containers, but it's officer discretion at that point just to piece things together to make sure the receipts and the packaging is matching up with what they say is there. And I think we're gonna be in limbo for a few years here until we see changes at the state or federal level across the board. This is kind of a Band-Aid for our municipality, I guess, to catch up with everybody else for right now.
Follow up to that. So this doesn't restrict anything that is currently for sale in any of the businesses that are legally selling it.
Yeah, this would allow for everything they're selling right now.
Okay. And then our residents who choose, adult residents who choose to purchase this,
Yeah.
don't have to worry about like what the label says, if it's this many milligrams or this
Oh,
many milligrams.
If it's on the shelf, they can buy it here in town, because those stores are gonna be operating under their guidelines, and they're gonna stick to the Farm Bill, so.
And just like any other controlled substance or prescription medication, you need to leave it in the container in which you purchased it in the event that you need to prove.
There's nothing in our ordinance that addresses that, but that's how we're training our guys to tell them, like, make sure the packaging matches up with what you're seeing.
Right.
But there's no, to my knowledge, I don't think there's any state language or nothing in here that would address carrying it in the proper dispenser. They could technically transfer it. But I always tell people we have contact with that they have those to keep that packaging, because it's a lot easier to explain to an officer on a traffic stop what it is if they have the original packaging.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for the detective? All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
You too. So, I would just like to say, I think this is a appropriate response to what's been going on in the community and schools. It protects the youth and gets some of this stuff out of the school, gives our officers another tool in their toolbox to use discretion, not only when they find someone with under the age of 21 with these substances, but the other side of this is we are catching up to modern times in terms of our ability to enforce THC, or all these different names, the Delta-9 version, the one that is still in the city. We don't have any ordinance for it, so if someone gets caught with it, at this point, it's automatically a criminal charge. You go to surrounding municipalities, those would be ordinance citations from the municipality. So we are catching up in that matter as well. So I think this does two things that help move us forward and make us current in terms of these substances and the laws.
I make a motion to approve the changes to the ordinance. The agenda, yep. I'll make a motion to make the revisions to the ordinance regarding the drug paraphernalia, drug products, and to create an ordinance regarding marijuana, synthetic cannabinoids, and hemp-derived cannabinoids.
Second?
We got a motion by Plus, second by Palmquist. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0. Item 3, discuss a referral from myself to change the city attorney position from an elected position to an appointed position. Yeah, again, this referral went in last year. We discussed it at legislative. We also discussed it at council. My parting words before I had to leave were that I think if we're going to move forward with something like this, it needs to be discussed further under what the terms would be. Because obviously, if we just take up a meeting or a common council meeting and we just make it official that the city attorney position is now appointed instead of elected, where does that leave us? Does that leave us with out a city attorney moving forward from, that night, or when the charter ordinance gets signed? So we would need a timetable if we were to move forward with something like that, and also discuss things like, currently the city attorney position is the parliamentarian at our meetings. The city prosecutor, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah?
Currently, yes.
Okay, currently. And then, of course, city attorney as we know it. Currently, this position requires someone to be a Rapids resident, obviously, being that it's an elected position. If we were to go to an appointment, is it a council appointment? Is it a mayoral appointment? Is it, do we take candidates through the HR committee and vet them and pick based on applications, or how do we do that? And those are some questions I think we would need to have answered before we just move forward with this. So we didn't discuss it very thoroughly at the previous legislative meeting because we had enough people say that they were not interested in moving this direction, that we couldn't pass a charter ordinance for this, which takes 6 out of 8 alderpersons. So feel free to share your thoughts, where we want to go with this, how we want to do it.
I'm in the place that I was previously when this was discussed. I did rewatch the meeting to figure out what problem we're trying to solve with this request. And there were 4 main reasons that came up during that meeting. The first was that some neighboring municipalities have appointed positions. I don't think that should be a determining factor in our decision. Our decision should be based on a number of things, but most importantly, where we are going to come up with the funds to support this position. If we convert to appointing the attorney, we will be spending more taxpayer dollars to provide benefits, as the individual hired would have increased retirement contributions, paid vacation, and an increased salary that is based solely on longevity. The second reason was sustainability, and as we talked about during the last meeting, we haven't had a problem with sustainability in 57 years. The third reason was proactive succession planning, which was an attempt to prepare for something that we haven't encountered in 57 years, which makes me question, why do we feel the need to prepare for this now? And the last reason was to help align roles and responsibilities of staff. And again, as I stated during the previous meeting, having a job description is not going to fix the organizational culture that has developed over the years within the city. It will not mend a lack of accountability, and it will not convince those who are operating under the belief that there are no repercussions for disregarding the directives of our mayor. What would help with that is a referral to the Human Resources Committee to create a disciplinary action policy, which we don't currently have, that would outline and address employee conduct, performance issues, policy violations, and progressionable action steps, including verbal warnings, written warnings, suspension, and termination. So I don't feel the need to talk about where this could go or how we would handle this, because there is not a problem that is solved by making this position appointed instead of elected.
And I would just add, I feel a little uneasy whenever we're taking, being an elected position. It means the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids get a voice. They choose who is in that position. And I get a little uneasy when we're taking choice and options away from the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids to elect and choose who they guide the city, who helps with the ordinances, who acts as the parliamentarian and as the prosecutor for the city. So taking that option away from the citizens makes me uncomfortable, and that's why I'm not in favor of making it an appointed position.
Go ahead, let Dennis go.
Me first? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the idea of elections where people would have a choice, but I think in this case here, I think I'd like to see it be appointed, and maybe the HR committee would probably be the committee that would do the interviewing, and then, discuss whatever, well, the salaries and everything else that would be included, but I would be in favor of this, to appoint this position.
I agree with Alderman Plus. I like the fact that the citizens of Rapids would have a say-so in this matter. I'm also a firm believer in competition. It's been going the same for quite a while, but competition keeps everybody sharp. I like to see that in the scenario, so I would be voting for having this as an election for that reason alone.
I guess my stance hasn't changed from last time either. I'm for the appointed or hired position. Nothing against Sue. I think she's done a great job, but there hasn't been the competition for that position. A lot of people don't want to run an election. It's not an easy thing to do. And I think by having an appointed or hired position, you're bringing in more qualified people. It's expanded outside the city, which, I don't care if they're based in the city or not. We don't do that for anybody else. So I personally would be for the appointed or hired position over elected.
Yeah, I have not changed my position. I remain in favor of appointing this position.
All right, thank you, everybody, for contributing. So it stands where it did previously. We have at least 3 who are in favor of keeping it an elected position at tonight's meeting, which would not put it over what is needed to pass the charter ordinance at 6 out of 8. I would just say this, because the referral originally came from me, and I'm going to talk about Sue, but you don't have to comment, Sue. Sue has been a pillar in the city for some time. However, she's getting closer to retirement age, and when I think of succession planning and elections, this position specifically will be taking out circulating papers in December, as I mentioned previously. The election will be in April 2026, so that person hypothetically could serve through 2030. Now, let's take the scenario we're in. If someone were to be in that position and retire, then it would be on us to call a special election, and hopefully people would circulate papers. If they did not, at that point, we would be having this conversation about making this an appointed position. Where it stands right now, I think it's too close to circulation time to decide to make this change. I don't know what candidates are out there that are in their careers and have been planning to enter into this election in December. It's kind of why I wish we would have took it up earlier, but we're at where we're at, and at this point, we move forward with it being an elected position. But down the road, I think we may have to consider going back to appointed, but we're not at that point yet. So I don't have anything further to say. I think the outcome is the same as before. However, if we do think there's gonna be some change in the voting on this, we would still need to figure out, you know, what those parameters would be on establishing an appointed position and when the elected positions ends. So,
I have a question,
go ahead.
which is for Sue, related to the law regarding this and not your personal interaction with it. Since it's an elected position, at any point in time, if somebody who runs for the 4-year term and for some reason, retirement, moving out of the city, God forbid death, ends their term early, that by state statute is handled the same way that we handle council appointments. Did I read that correctly?
Right, it would be an appointment by the council. Actually, right, and then there would be whether you'd want a special election, you know, it's all depending upon the time of how much time is left in the term, whether there's a special election and how soon, and then that person appointed I would assume would then, or I should say, that person would then be in office until the special election, and then you'd have your special election. So kind of like the decisions you've had to make before of how, you know, when did someone resign or retire, and then how, you know, when is the next election, how long is their term, that kind of would be the analysis you would make of, but you probably would, you know, appoint someone until then a special election, and then you'd have a special election for the remainder of the term. And there's nothing to keep you from at that, when that happens, that you could revisit, you know, when there's a vacancy that you could revisit that, well, maybe you want to change it to, you know, you could obviously change it at that time also, or consider changing it at that time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. No action is taken on this item. Item 4 is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Palmquist, second by Plus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at 6:27 PM. Happy Independence Day, everyone.